All right. We are recording. Excellent. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another thrilling episode of the Boston New Technology and Rhode Island New Technology Fireside Chat series. We have a very special treat for you in store this Friday. We have my friend and startup innovation colleague, Eric Moyal from Project Insulin here, who's going to be telling us a little bit more about his story, what's going on with what he's building, the mission, the vision, all kinds of fun things. So before we get underway, I just want to say, thanks, Eric, for joining us. And yeah, really glad to have you here, brother. Oh, for some reason, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
Another weird UI thing is on my screen it says that I'm muted.
Okay.
But all right, as long as we're all clear.
We're all clear.
I'll take the re-roll on the intro. Thanks for having me, Steve. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and talking about Project Insulin and what we're doing. Yeah, I guess I'll start with a little intro about who we are.
That was actually going to be my suggestion. Yeah, let's hear a little bit more about you and the origin story of Project Insulin, which, as you know, I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. So Project Insulin is a nonprofit. We're going to create our own generic insulin and sell it directly to patients at cost. So currently, insulin, if you don't have insurance, costs about $300 a vial. And with insurance, the average person's paying about $100 a vial. Of course, there are people who pay less than this, but these are just averages. And that average person needs about 3 vials a month. So that is 36 vials a year. So it can come out to over $1,000 a month if you don't have insurance. And our goal is to bring down that price and make it affordable by making our own and selling it directly to patients at cost.
Fantastic. I remember we were introduced, I believe, by Marissa from Innovation Studio. It feels like forever ago, and like when you unpacked everything to me about what you're doing, especially from the perspective of somebody myself being a former patient advocate for my late mother, being involved in both like the healthcare space and the startup space, and seeing that like combination where the linkage is like that of again, advocacy, like wanting everybody to have affordable access to these life-saving medications. I mean, it's amazing. So let's see what we got here. I mean, I did my best to come up with some really stimulating questions. So we went through the origin story really nicely. So we'll start with this. I mean, what would you say are you most at this stage, at this current stage? What are you most like excited about when it comes to where you're at and how this journey has been progressing so far?
Yeah, so I think I came into this expecting it to go by quicker. This is my first experience running a startup. I've never done it before. Um, and I had been a fundraiser for 5 years before that at Brandeis University. And I really enjoyed fundraising. I thought it was it was a fun job, and I was good at it. And so I was like, great, I'll just start my own nonprofit. We'll raise money and we'll make insulin, no problem. But yeah, you kind of forget the fact that Brandeis comes with its resources and database and marketing and this already established connection to a university that alumni have. But when starting my own nonprofit, no one knows who we are, no one knows what we're doing. It's hard to like trust that what I'm saying is actually going to happen because I'm just a guy that nobody knows. And so it was really hard getting to today where I think we've gotten all those things in a line. We have drug proposals from, billion-dollar companies that are ready once we have enough money for it. We've created business plans, executive summaries. I have a much better understanding of what Project Insulin really is and how we're going to move forward. We have a network of volunteers and advisors and mentors from, across the Northeast, not just Boston and Rhode Island. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to be at the point where I think now progress can be made. It's like, it's not like 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but rather, 2 years back to just prepare and get ready. And now, everything just feels sharp and crisp and ready to move forward. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited to properly start drug development, properly start marketing campaigns and community engagement and all these different opportunities that have been buzzing in my head for a few years now that we couldn't do because we just weren't ready.
Yeah, and just building off of that, I think it's really encouraging whenever I hear you or anybody who's building to have that sense of coming into that like place of focused clarity, and then also like seeing results and proof points, validation markers, like because it is very ambitious what you're doing. I've always said it's also a very noble undertaking, but with such a thing it can become unwieldy and overwhelming. So seeing the progress that you've made, that's really awesome. And then I guess as a follow up, my follow up to that would be from where you're at right now, just to do like a little bit of like healthy predicting. Obviously, we can't predict the
Mm-hmm.
future, but just to sort of be like imaginative for a second.
Yeah.
Where do you see, or perhaps where would you like to see in a perfect world, like Project Insulin developing in like the months ahead? Like say, I don't know, let's use an example of like say after Rhode Island Startup Week, which by the way, we love Rhode Island Startup Week. We'll be talking about that later.
Well, that's only like a week from now, Steve. So I don't know if we're gonna really knock any metrics out of the park by then. But I'll,
I don't
I'll let
know.
you
I got
answer.
faith in you. I got faith in you.
I'll answer for the end of the year, so through
Okay,
December
perfect.
31st.
Perfect.
Mostly because a lot more things happen right
Right.
after Rhode Island Startup Week than before, which is just a lot of prep.
Mhm.
But before I get into it, I think people would kind of like this. But my partner is at an econ conference right now, and one of the presenters was presenting on CEO um, accuracy of predicting quarterly gains. So, like predicting next quarter's
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
results. And CEOs were like not only wildly off, but they were also wildly off on how sure they were relative to what actually ended up happening. And if they had just looked at the previous quarter and used that as a reference point, they would have been able to get really close to um, the correct answer. So just that little funny anecdote.
I don't know.
But it makes sense.
You're asking me to be logical, so it's a little. Yeah, true.
Yeah, yeah, just anecdote, and I think CEOs are supposed to think positively of what's going to happen next. But with that in mind, um, we've got a big end of year. So it starts with Rhode Island Startup Week. We're hosting an event at the Westway Club in Providence. It's a roundtable discussion about fundraising and fundraising as a nonprofit. And I think it's a field that not a lot of people know about or discuss, and it's really hard. It's not easy. So I'm excited to do that. And then Diabetes Awareness Month comes in. We've got a lot of exciting things happening then. Hoping to do a couple events, and then that rolls right into end of year fundraising. So anyone who hasn't yet made their tax deductible donations and are looking to get a tax write off, that's when we start targeting them and hope to get some money before the end of the fiscal year. So for us, I'm really excited for Diabetes Awareness Month. I think it'll lead to a pretty big boon in our social media following. Um, we've prepared a lot. Last year, our following tripled. We went from 100 to 300 followers on Instagram and 1,000 followers overall across platforms. And yeah, I think this year, I mean, triple seems pretty nice, but I'm hoping to break 700 or 800 followers on Instagram and a couple of other milestones for other social media platforms, and raise a few more $1,000 before the end of the year so that we can come into 2024. Oh my God. And into our big crowdfunding campaign in March, prepared to really raise a large amount so we can start our drug development.
a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of exciting
Yeah.
development coming up, and I'm very, as I had been saying to you before, I think I may have even mentioned it here on the fireside chat, but I'm really excited about Rhode Island Startup Week. I'm really excited that you're working with another one of our friends, Greg Stapleton over at the Westway, and I know that that particular topic that you're going to be focusing on is something that I also really resonate with because what I appreciate about the innovation ecosystem in New England as a whole, Rhode Island, Boston, is there's this like potpourri of you have for profits, you have nonprofits, you have all these different businesses. And my question would then be, as you've been walking along this pathway, what have been like some key milestones
Hmm.
and then also like what have those done to really reaffirm like your why? Because I know your why is really important to you when it
Hmm.
comes to this too. So what have been some of those highlights?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Some of the, I mean, it started, we'll go to the beginning, right? We won some prize money at the Brandeis University Startup Contest. I was a master's student while I was working, so I was eligible to pitch, and we won $2,500, which, you know, is a lot of money to start up with when you don't have anything.
Definitely. Oh, that's nothing to blush at. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was an exciting, like, okay, this is real, like this can actually happen. And then after that, our first Pi Day. Pi Day is our annual crowdfunding campaign. We do it on Pi Day 314, and we do it because our initials are PI, Project Insulin. And we try to raise $3,141.59, which is the first few digits of pi. Um,
Just what I'm saying.
and yeah, and we hit it. We hit our goal, which was really exciting and reassuring. And after that, it was like we transitioned from you know doing these smaller things where it was just kind of like throwing darts at a board and hoping something hits to more um, targeted opportunities to grow. So, speaking of Innovation Studio, we joined their Grow program, and um, we did the Activate Your Impact program with Boston Impact Initiative. Um, those were really nice milestones, just to say like, we're learning more, we're understanding what running a business is like. Um, I've built, mentorship through the RI Hub Venture Mentoring Services. They've really helped me build and just polish, like all these opportunities, just really polish. And then I think the biggest one was actually most recently, I got into the Social Enterprise Greenhouse Accelerator Program, which I had applied for in February and didn't get in. And then I applied for again in August, and I'm in the cohort now. And to me, that was the biggest show of growth. Um, they shared it was the most competitive cycle, and to have not gotten in last time, I was a bit frustrated because we're a nonprofit, like finally an accelerator that is tailored to what we're doing, and to not get in, it was kind of like we're just not quite there yet. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm excited that we're there, right? And so this was a really good showing that we've reached that point.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple of things there too that I want to highlight. So, a couple of minutes ago, you gave us that anecdote about CEOs like predicting the future,
Mhm.
perhaps a bit inaccurately, and that to me showed that. One second, please. That to me showed that you have a lot of this, humility and self awareness, but you also have a lot of confidence. What have been some of the challenges that you've come up against in recent times that have really also served as learning opportunities? I know you brought up a few just then, but have there been any others that have really like helped you progress?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Well, first of all, it's hard. Period. Right? Like that's already enough.
All
Um,
I know.
yeah, but I mean, I think like when you look on people's social media and you look at people's like what people post about, Like, of course, I'm going to post that I got into this program, or I got into that program, or we got this grant, or I'm on this podcast, right? But it's all the other times that you're not getting into things and you're seeing other people get into them. It's hard. Like, I'm happy for my friends who are entrepreneurs who are doing well, and there's one guy who like totally swept the Rhode Island startup circuit. um, and I was really happy for him, but I lost, right, in all those moments that he won, I lost. So those are just it's just really hard. It's hard to, there's imposter syndrome, and there's just like a that voice in the back of your head that's like, oh, maybe, like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Like, maybe this is too hard. Maybe, like, you should have, like, changed to a for-profit, which is something that a lot of people have told me. But I think what's important in those moments is to, like, accept those feelings, and then, like, acknowledge their existence, and then let them go. Like, understanding that like the motivation, the driver in you pushes back at that. And so um yeah, I think that's kind of, I mean, those moments are the hard ones. If you want like a specific example of some of those, I think like not getting into SEG in the past, losing out on grant opportunities because our mission is too risky, losing out on opportunities because we're a nonprofit and it doesn't quite make sense to people why we're doing a nonprofit versus a for-profit. And, it's not like those are personal attacks or criticisms, but in the early stages, it feels like that because this is all I'm doing, right? Like, I quit my full-time job and have been eating into my savings to get this done. And when people are telling you like no, or not right now, that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is to me really reflective of something that I've also been seeing a lot with this new like entrepreneurial or innovative like awakening on the part of individuals who like, when you go on LinkedIn, when I go on LinkedIn, for example, or Twitter, we see the happy time like highlight reels,
Yeah.
fun updates, exciting events, like all of this. And to your point, it's really cool when we can share in the success of our colleagues, our friends, but it's also somewhat, like debilitating experience when you're in the trenches, you're in the arena every day, and maybe it's one of those days where either nothing goes right or nothing happens. I mean, to me,
Mm-hmm.
as a former, solopreneur, and I worked for my dad in our venture for a number of years. I mean, those days when you're just stuck in the doldrums are even worse because you have time to spend with yourself. What you brought up that I think is really important that I'd like to underscore is, well, it's two things. Number one, I think it's really the best thing to not let our feelings become internalized. So again, like you said, accept those feelings. When they come, just spend some time with them. Ask ourselves, like, why am I feeling this way? What can I do to look at this a little bit more objectively? Because obviously we have our very own biases. But the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is like, how can we separate? And let me ask you this actually: how have you learned, as somebody who's building Project Insulin, how have you learned to separate the constructive criticism from the stuff where obviously it may be just a matter of like personal preference or dislike or just useless advice, basically?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and I don't think I've like mastered it, right? Like,
Neither,
of course, we're always,
FYI, neither have I.
yeah, like we're always growing. Things are always changing with internally, externally. But I mean, the simple answer is I go to therapy. Like, I go to
You as
therapy. We
well.
like
Yeah.
we tackle our problem. We tackle my problems. We like work on it. Separate myself from Project Insulin, and like, yeah, like there's a lot of fear, and if this doesn't succeed, it's like I go on LinkedIn. Like, I dread the day I have to go on LinkedIn and write, unfortunately, Project Insulin didn't make it. Like, we're
I've had
gonna,
that before too.
right?
Yeah,
Like, that is like such a scary feeling, and it's so funny that it's like linked in. It's not like the actual fact that Project
it's like
Insulin
yeah,
is coming
I hear
down,
you.
but it's like signaling to all these people that some of who believe in you, some of who may believe in you, but may not believe in the mission or whatever, and telling them like, hey, it just didn't work, right? And I think what's important is like, I mean, Project Insulin in particular is like a really big issue, and we're tackling something so ginormous. The best case, pie in the sky scenario is we change the way generic drugs are made, distributed, and priced around the world forever, right? Like that is very top best case scenario. And if we fail, that scenario doesn't happen, or at least doesn't happen as fast. And so that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself as a first time founder who doesn't know anything about drug development, who came in as a fundraiser with a passion for chronic illnesses, not as a scientist with a knowledge of developing insulin. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just like, again, taking a moment, understanding that people aren't, no one's trying to make you fail, right? People just think that you can succeed in different ways. And there is like a level of confidence and sureness you need to say, thank you for the advice. We're not there right now. Like, that's not for us. Like, and you have to live with the fact that in 3 years they could have been right and you could have been wrong. But like, you started the project, and the whole saying of trusting your gut. Um, yeah, like you just kind of have to trust that you are doing it the right way, and but you also have to be willing to accept that feedback, and that's what's important. Is like, again, accepting the feedback, saying yes or no, or deciding what you feel about it, and then moving forward. But it's not, you can't just say, um, you can't just like, if you take it as an affront and you take it personally, that hurts the company. Like, whether or not you decide to go in that direction or not, doesn't matter. But not taking the time to think about it and thoroughly understand the pros and cons of, branching left or branching right, that hurts the company because you're not taking everything into account that you need to move forward.
Yeah, and I think it's especially hard to do that when, I mean, going back to something else that you highlighted and accentuated so nicely was how do we? I asked Jessica Lynch the same question that I'm about to ask you because I think it's very important. How do we, knowing that, like you said, we're always growing and it's never really a sure thing, but how do we get better and better over time with decoupling ourselves from what it is that we're doing and recognizing that there's like a whole person here, not just there's Eric Moyal. There's not just Eric Moyal of Project Insulin. Yes, it's very precious to you. You built it with the help of your team, but especially during those times, I think there's a very specific importance here. Like during those times when things are taking a while, or maybe there's been a little bit of a disappointment, a little bit of something that didn't go right. Like, how do we disassociate in a way, like or distinguish, I should say, the person from the company?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer because it's something I'm currently working on. Like,
Same.
it is a, it's a pretty big topic in my therapy sessions right now. Um, but I'll say this: regardless of how you get to that point where you can acknowledge both those parts of your personality, right? The founder and then the individual who like has emotional needs and like wants and personal time and like fun and all that stuff. Uh, um, no matter what the method to get there, it's going to take time. So um, for me right now, it's like like the acknowledgement of feelings and all that is kind of my is the work I'm doing today to get to the point where tomorrow I can blend those two people and understand like the needs of both and when the needs of one needs to take precedence over the other. Um, right? Like my personal life will not always align with my project insulin life. I will not always want to be sitting in front of a computer writing grant applications. Like
Yeah,
that is
sure.
not right. Like as much as Project Insulin Me needs that to happen, there is a point where writing one more grant will lead to burnout that will affect both personal and Project Insulin Me negatively for a longer period of time than just skipping the grant. And yeah, I think like again, it's acknowledging, right? I feel like I keep saying the same thing, but it's acknowledging that those moments might be hurtful to you, right? The pushing through and writing one more grant, um, understanding the trade off. Like if it's a big grant that you think you're gonna get and it's worth the burnout tomorrow, fine. But if it's a grant that you're like really struggling to write and it's going to take you a really long time and you're not going to, um, you don't feel like you're going to have a good chance at it, why put yourself through all that stress? Instead, like take the night off, like have personally you enjoy a night, and then tomorrow you'll be fresh and energized to take on the other parts of the business, right? Like one grant isn't going to make or break your whole business, hopefully. Um,
Yeah,
so
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Part of that too, as I've grown, as you've grown as individuals in the space, is once you start to think in this way, in this mode, you're able to better manage your time, your energy, where you're fixing your and placing your attention. I mean, when I was a young founder, I was the person that would try to go to like 3 or 4 startup events a day. And it's exciting. It's exciting, like when you're first starting out. Like I'm going to see all these new people, and I'm going to learn all these new things. Wow, this is like a beautiful dream. But every dream has to come to an end, and what you end up waking up with, like I did back in 2019, was real burnout. I mean, that was also the time where I had this expectation that if I took somebody else's idea, took care of it for them, and then basically tried to make it scale, it would work out. It most certainly didn't. I learned a lot of valuable lessons in the process, but I think it does go back to that theme we've kind of been, treating, which is, being gentle with yourself, being disciplined enough to know that you need to focus on these things. But I think especially the time piece, and I'm interested in knowing from you, like how have you learned to better like manage your time as a founder? Because let's face it, founders these days, founders back in 2019, they all face the same problem, which is where do I go? What do I do? What is most valuable to me in this moment?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not a very good time management
I,
person. I'm like very honest about it. um, I I bounce from task to task. I like will do the things that are fun rather than the things that are important. But recently, more recently, I've gotten better at it, and honestly, this works for me. I don't think this is going to work for everyone, and not everyone has this kind of situation. But I have volunteers that help me with different tasks. And I basically set deadlines for them, and then we meet after that deadline. And so what I will do is, in order for them to like progress forward onto the next task or like in our next meeting have something more to do and create an efficient, effective like process, um, they need me to complete something as well. And so I'm essentially creating deadlines for myself by getting by scheduling meetings with the volunteers so that the volunteer is essentially my deadline. And I mean, it's makeshift. It's not perfect. It's not like I would much rather just be able to write a list down and cross the things off, but that just doesn't work for me. So I'm still figuring it out. But when it comes to the things that are important versus like not important, um, I think I do a pretty good job at the things that are very important, like cranking those out. It's the like anything underneath that is where I kind of teeter in either direction. Um, But yeah, I mean, being in an accelerator is fantastic for that because there's literally homework and deadlines, and like I've been dragging my feet on redoing the mission and vision statements. Guess what the first week's homework was? Writing the mission and vision
Where,
statement.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really helpful structure for me. Like school has become like pretty. It's like it's a structure I know, right? I did it for 17 years. Or no, way more than that, but whatever. I have two master's degree, K through 12, an undergrad. So it's like I've been in school for a long time, so I'm comfortable with that process. Um, yeah, so I think it depends on each person, and I'm I'm the last person to ask about like proper tips and tricks. I know what works for me, or I know what could work for me, and so I try to do those things.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot better, though, in a way, asking somebody
Mhm.
this and getting, as you always are, very honest and forthcoming with the feedback versus sort of like a canned thing like, well, I write everything down and then, like, I go for a walk and I, blah, blah. I mean, I know those things are healthy activities, but I've always really appreciated how sincere you are in, like, really letting me into what you're doing. And, like, with that being said, I know we're coming up on time here, so. I wanted to ask you to speak to our audience and let them know. I mean, how should they find out more about Project Insulin? What should they keep in mind as they're hopefully going to be going on this journey with you too, as they keep in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So to keep up with what we're doing, projectinsulin.org. Um, that's our website. You can find all of our social media links, our newsletter, our volunteer form, our donate page. It's all on there. Like I said earlier, I'm really excited for the next 3 months with Diabetes Awareness Month around the corner. We've got a lot of educational posts that we're doing, and we're hoping to do a couple of in-person events and maybe an online event. Our volunteers, they meet monthly. We just had our meeting a couple of days ago. And because it's an exciting time, we have a lot of work and exciting work to work on. So, a little anecdote here is that our marketing team kind of joined in, and again, marketing team volunteers. We had a meeting recently, and I was like, "Well, guess what? You guys can all add to your resume." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Billboard design." And they said, "What?" And so I found out that we got free billboard space off of a highway in Massachusetts for Diabetes Awareness Month, and um, of course, none of us have the experience, but we're about to, and it's like it's cool to be able to help people gain new experiences that will help their careers when I can't provide them with money, right? Like in an ideal world, everyone's getting paid for the work they do, um, but that's not possible right now. So I'm glad that there is something that I'm contributing to their lives as well as because this means so much to me. It would be a shame to not be able to help the people who are helping me.
I love that confidence because I know it's genuine, and I love that empathy that you have for people who are part of the team, like saying, we don't know about it, but we're going to, we're about to. Like, I really like that. So, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know the other day I told you that I was looking forward to this. It's going to definitely be the highlight of my week, right up there. So, thank you so much for speaking with me. Again, everybody, please keep in touch with Eric. He's doing amazing work with Project Insulin. We love having him as part of our community. He had so much vibrancy to it. And we will catch you next time. Thanks again, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to coming back with a big update, lots of cool things happening, all
We
that
do
stuff.
too. Thank you, sir.